Hello everyone, welcome to Steel Force Welding and Forge. I just got something in the mail. It's one of two things and I'm very excited for both of them. It is the new Welder from Bestarc. It is the MIG 145 110 volt welder. So thank you to the folks at Bestarc who sent this out to me to have this reviewed. We're going to hook this thing up and give it a complete review and unboxing. All right, here is the main unit. Looks like some accessories. First impressions. The size of this guy is surprisingly compact. That is about the size of a suitcase welder, if not even smaller. So this is advertised as a gasless MIG welder, so I'm guessing they assume we're using a flux core. I'd say that that gun feels on par with my Vulcan MIG Max 215. Does not feel light or cheap. Similar consumables as well. Insulated tip, that's very nice. Let's go ahead and pop this top off here and see what this looks like. It looks like the top comes off like this. Huh, look at that. Now that is interesting. Almost every single feed that I've ever seen is a side loader. This is the first top loading feed unit I've ever seen. So that's kind of neat. We got two wheels down here, a wire to feed the unit, instructions, as well as our plate here for giving us our settings. All right, so here is the stick welding accessory. Here's our ground cable. This must be a strap for the unit. I'm guessing this is the flux cord wire. Got some tips and knurled drive rollers. That's good because this is flux core, as well as the instructions. All right, so there's the unboxing portion. I'm gonna go ahead and read the instructions on this guy and then we'll set it all up and we'll start burning some plates up. So let's go ahead and get set up. Now this machine runs on flux core. It does not have the option for solid core wire. So we need to make sure we are set up for that correctly. And there's a couple things we have to check. One, we have to make sure that our drive rollers are correct. So here's our drive unit. Now in most machines there is a terminal here to switch the unit from DC electropositive to DC electronegative. Now in this particular machine I don't see that. So I'm assuming what we'll do is we will set our machine up by putting our ground into the negative slot to run off of DC electronegative. So first, let's check our drive roller. Okay, so all the stuff in here is plastic. Now normally, this guy would be spring-loaded. It is not. But we do have an option here to set our wire tension. So we can look here. This may be difficult for you to see, but these are what is called V-knurled rollers. What that means, look at the profile to the side like this. This channel makes a V and it has these slight knurls in it that are meant for catching wire. And this is the kind of wires that we want to use when running flux cord wire. If we were running solid MIG wire, it'd be V-grooved, not knurled. Now the wire that we are running, as you can see right here, says we are running 0.10 millimeter. So we're using the 1.0 millimeter drive roller as well, which is what was on here. So let's put this cap back on so we do have the proper roller. Now, for those who may be new to the welding world, I would recommend getting a pair of these. These are called Welpers or welding pliers. These work very well with snipping wire and any other tools you may need when dealing with a welder. And also, for those who may be new to the welding world, this wire spool is actually under tension. When you open this up, if you were to snip this wire and just let it go, this entire wire coil will uncoil itself and you'll be left with a big unusable mess because the wire from that point on after uncoiling will never ever run correctly. It'll get kinked up in the machine if you try to run it after uncoiling itself. So what we're going to do, we're going to unbend this, pull it out, snip it clean off, put it on our drive roller, and then run it through this hole, out this hole, over our roller, and into our machine. Now the direction that you put this wire in here does matter. If you were to put it in like so, and the wire has to travel kind of over itself and over a sharp angle into your machine, it will not run properly. So we're going to install it like so. Ooh, did you see that? How that almost went on me? let's go ahead and put this on first. Now I struggled quite a bit with loading this thing. Most of the time there is some kind of spike that's on that post holding the spindle that prevents it from uncoiling and also helps to feed it into the unit. In retrospect, what I should have done was put the wire on first, completely tighten that wing nut, and then fed it into the drive rollers. Now we'll flip our machine on. The power switch is here in the back. Okay, so what these two numbers here mean, 2T, that means you pull the trigger, your electrode's live, you let go, it turns off. 4T means you pull the trigger, let go, it is still live, pull the trigger again, shut it off. So 20.7 volts all the way down to 16.5. Now with this button here, we adjust our wire size. Now according to the coil there, it says it's 1.0 millimeters. That equals out to about 0.039 inches, so we're set up for 0.04. So one interesting thing about this machine is that it has solely synergetic settings, which means that we do not adjust the wire feed speed ourselves. That is done entirely by the machine. The machine will adjust our wire feed speed based on how we are performing as a welder. In other words, based on your stick out, how fast you're going, all of that stuff. So the only thing that we adjust is our amperage right here. So this machine does have the option to auto feed your wire. So let's go ahead and do that. There it is. All right, so we're good to go there. So let's go ahead and get this guy hooked up with our ground. So again, we want DC electronegative welding for our flux core. So we're gonna go ahead and take our ground and we're gonna put it in the negative slot. And we should be good to go. All right, here we go. And as you can see, nothing. Turns out I had to flip the ground over and put it into the positive terminal in order to get an arc. There we go. A nice smooth arc. I'll definitely give it that. That flux core came off pretty nice, and I gotta say, that is not a bad stringer bead, especially for right out of the box and using the recommended settings. Next, I'll be doing a lap weld using the same material and same settings as before on this short pass. But on the next long pass, I'll turn my temperature down slightly to see how it looks. And look there, that looks pretty nice, except for the end there. And again, that's mostly my fault. We turn it over, and you can see we are definitely getting adequate penetration. In fact, we're burning through. So we're gonna turn that down a little bit, and then we're gonna run this length here. For this bead, I turned my heat down from 19.5 to 19.0. So this ran pretty well, but it was a little cold. It's probably better to run this at 19.2 or 19.3. I did a little bit of back and forth manipulation for this weld and turned it up to 19.2. This weld turned out very well, had good consistent beading and very good penetration. So now I've adjusted the machine from the 2T setting to the 4T setting. Now, if what I believe is true, if I pull this trigger, it should keep going even though I let go. Yes! So what happens is now I don't have to sit and hold the trigger the whole time I'm welding. I can pull it once to start it and pull it again to let go. It's really nice, especially if you have carpal tunnel or wrist problems. Let's go ahead and give that a try. Perfect. A lot of times with that feature, you'll get your electrode or your wire stuck in your puddle. That didn't happen. So definitely enjoy that setting. Now let's run some 3/16. If a 110 machine can handle 3/16 inch material, it's a pretty decent machine. At this setting it came out okay, but a little bit cold, so I cranked my heat up and ran it again. And this time I got some decent results. You can actually see a little bit of discoloration on the back of this plate, meaning we got adequate penetration. So now it's time to run some 1/4 inch. This is what separates the men from the boys. When you get into the realm of 1/4 inch, this is when we're getting into plate metal fabrication. So now we have our voltage completely maxed out. Now you see how the flux is kind of sticking down there in the edges? That tells me that we're a little bit undercut, but it's not bad. So we are definitely pushing this machine to the max. But I gotta say, it's doing a lot better than I thought. But now if we turn it over, you can see I don't see any blistering of the mill scale on this side. Alright, so we're set up for the stick electrode. Now under the directions on the plate, it says, I believe they call this acid electrode. Interesting way to describe it, but that's what it is. And they recommend it under DC electronegative welding, which is odd because typically it's DC electropositive for stick welding. So let's give it a try and see what happens here. Because we're running off of a smaller machine, we're going to be using 332 6011 electrodes. For those unfamiliar with stick welding, 6011 electrodes offer lower tensile strength but much higher penetrating power. They're great for little machines. That does seem to be welding correctly. However, not enough power. So we're going to go ahead and crank it up to... let's go to 22.2. Now that setting turned out nice. You can see that bead in the upper right hand corner. That darn near looks like a 7018 bead. Now we're running at 21.8 volts. That setting seemed to do the trick. We got a good bead and good penetrating power. Now let's max this guy out at 24.2 volts and see how it looks. Now visually, I could see that we were getting good penetrating power and making a big puddle for this guy. However, when we turned it over, I had a hard time seeing any blistering of the mill scale on the back. But overall, I'd say it did a pretty decent job. So one thing I want to make a quick note of before I move on to my final thoughts. Shortly after I finished running that bead on that 1/4-inch piece of material that you saw, the machine just shut off. And I tried to turn it back on, it wouldn't turn back on. And I had assumed I'd somehow flipped the duty cycle, which didn't make sense because I hadn't been running it that long. Well, turns out I actually blew the breaker. Now again, this 110 volt breaker has its own separate line dedicated to this outlet right here. It runs off of nothing else. So even though I have that and the 220 box downstairs, I still managed to kill the breaker switch. So I wouldn't recommend running this thing for extended periods of time on 1/4-inch material. Now for, short little bursts, okay, no problem, but if you gotta run a long bead, it's probably not gonna work out for you at home. But just wanted to send that info out there. So that wraps up today's video, folks. Please give me a thumbs up, please hit that subscribe button, and if you have any questions, please leave me a comment down below about this machine, if you have any general welding questions, or if there are some videos you would like to see in the future. Thank you again to the fine folks out at Bestarc for sending me this machine free of charge. I absolutely love having this as an option for in-the-field welding now. I'll definitely be taking advantage of this machine. I'll be providing links down below to many of Bestarc's links, including their TikTok, Instagram, their main page, and if you are interested in purchasing this unit, the Amazon page as well. So folks, until next time, work hard and stay humble.